Hello, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to TrAKtion 2020. I'm Isaac Vandenberg, CEO here at Launch Alaska. It was really fun seeing the folks kind of coming in as this Zoom webinar got set up and seeing a lot of familiar names and friends out there. So really fun to have everyone on the line today. And thanks for taking time out of your day to join us. So before we get started, a little bit of housekeeping for today. I know you all have been doing a lot of Zoom conferences recently, and everyone is probably very intimately familiar with Zoom. This is a webinar, so it's a bit different from maybe some of the Zoom meetings that you may be familiar with. So please use the Q&A feature for all questions you have throughout the event. And then use that chat function and select all panelists to chat with staff and panelists. No, it's a lot of detail directions here at the beginning. So again, just select all panelists to chat with staff and panelists, and all panelists and attendees to chat with other attendees. So you have that little drop-down menu there above your field if you want to chat with folks. If you haven't yet, please introduce yourself in the chat with your name, company, and where you are calling in from today so everyone can see you. Also, I just wanted to say that we sent the first 100 registrants these tidy little care packages. It's a bit of a welcome kit, and they have a few snacks in there for folks and some branded gear. So we have some Launch Alaska straws that we're excited about. These straws work really well. I've tested them on the Alaska Communications mug, and it actually works wonderfully well, as you can see. I would also just say that they work equally well in the Launch Alaska mugs. Equally delicious water for all of you, and so I encourage you to indulge in that. I would also just say that we, in those care packages, have some treats from Heather's Choice. And Heather's Choice was part of our very first cohort way back when we got started, and she has done incredibly well and is probably in an REI or a coffee shop near you as we're on this call. Also, these wonderful Alaska Gold Nugget candies. We sourced several things from Alaska companies as a way to highlight all the neat stuff that some of our companies are doing. Again, just as a way to say thank you for joining, and we hope you enjoy those kits. Also, before we begin, I wanted to just take a minute to recognize that our offices at Launch Alaska are located on the traditional territories of the Dena'ina people, who have called this entire region home for thousands of years, and will call it home for thousands of years more. And it's a real thing for us. For our organization to succeed, we depend on the contributions, innovations, the contemporary perspective of Alaska's indigenous peoples, and through the partnerships, some of which you'll hear about today, we form projects, and we have companies that are working with Alaska's First Peoples and the communities, and we hope to acknowledge and honor the past and present land stewardship and the place-based knowledge of the people of these territories. And so we just wanted to start with that. So 2020, what a year 2020 has been, right? This has been, needless to say, an extremely challenging time for people throughout the country. Plans of all sorts have been put on hold. Lives have been disrupted, loved ones have been lost, and the country continues to grapple with the racial injustice, and some of the worst effects of climate change are now literally here in the form of forest fires and permafrost, and we're seeing ever intensifying storm cycles, and it's been a really tough year, and we recognize that. What we're hoping to do today, though, is, against this backdrop, bring a little bit of a perspective of some really exciting news and a view of the future that we'd like to share with you. It's a paradoxical thing to work at Launch Alaska right now, because while we're aware and we participate in the world swirling around us, we also think that there's so much to be excited about, and a lot of that is happening in Alaska. We have a mix of folks on the line today, some folks from Alaska and some folks from outside the state. So for those of you who are Alaskans, just bear with me for a minute. Although I hope some of this information, you'll find it, you know, an interesting perspective as well. But just, I think when people think about Alaska, it conjures a list of, you know, superlatives. That's true for folks who are living here as well as folks across the world. When you think of Alaska, you know, the southernmost tip of Alaska is 500 miles from the nearest US state. Our biggest city, which is Anchorage, is 4 times that distance. So the scale of this place is just incredible. If you cut the state in half, the 3rd largest state in the country would be Texas. And Alaska has more coastline than the rest of the US combined. And our offshore wind resource is 70% larger than the other 49 states. Or, you know, as we affectionately refer to them, the lower 48. We have over 3 million lakes in Alaska, but only about 3,000 of them have names that are Googleable. We have the same solar potential as Germany. A lot of folks find that surprising, which, if you think about it, until recently, Germany was the largest, the last couple of years, the largest solar market in the world. And we also love to cite this factoid that we have, you know, 250 island and microgrids in the state, actually more than that. And then if you think about seafood, seafood is a $14 billion industry in Alaska, and approximately 20% of our state's economic output. If Alaska were a country, we'd be the 6th largest seafood exporter in the world. And then that's all to say nothing of the vast hydrocarbon and mineral reserves that have undergirded the state's economy for the past 5 decades. And then there's the wildlife and the physical beauty and all this that attracts tourists by the droves. So if you think of Alaska just from a purely economic perspective, that's probably a lot of what's swirling through your mind, and those are the images. And don't get me wrong, that's all super important. The physical place that we live in does not get old no matter how long you live here. We all feel incredibly blessed and privileged to call this place home. Okay, maybe the month of April gets a little old sometimes, but let's not dwell on April. The rest of the year is glorious, and those of us who live here feel privileged and blessed, truly. One of the truths that our organization has zeroed in on over the last several years, however, is that even more valuable than the physical and environmental attributes of the state is the people who live here. They are really the state's true treasure. It's not that we have 250 island and microgrids in the state. What's really exciting is that we have people who have been operating those microgrids for decades. And, you know, let's say the vastness of the place is incredible, and we talk about how big it is. But if you really want to have your mind blown, talk to some folks in Alaska's aviation community, or talk to folks who live in villages with hundreds of miles separating them from their closest neighbor. It's the people that matter. And another one, you know, Alaska's coastlines and coast is rich and spectacular and storied. But the people who live there and who are carving out an existence there and have for thousands of years, they are a resource many fathoms deeper than in experience and knowledge than any of our coastlines. And so, yes, we have these amazing energy resources and incredible things that we can be proud of, but the people here are really the ones that matter. The folks who have figured out ingenious ways to find energy and convert it into work, and who know how to heat homes in really tough environments, and how to keep things lit, warm, working safe, and how to make things easy to fix. And so this doesn't seem like a huge breakthrough for us, but it really is, you know, the most important thing in this state and the most important part of our program. And I think if you ask folks like Piper with 60 Hertz, or MJ and Brian with Dash Systems, or Dan at Signal, or Tanya and Camion, or Jake at Oklo, ask any of our CEOs what the most part of working with our program is, or going through our program is, and the answer is almost always the same. It's that those relationships with Alaskans kind of movers and shakers, and many of you are on the line today. That's really the thing that matters. And it's really changed the way that we've run our program over the past few years. And so part of what we want to share today is some of the results of the incredible connections that are being made between Alaskans and our portfolio companies. Another thing that has really shifted the way that we run our program is just kind of watching what's happening in the world around us and listening to the kind of asset owners in the state, folks like utilities, municipalities, people that own some of the physical infrastructure in the state, and hearing from them that they're recognizing that there is a big, kind of energy transition going on globally. There's this electrification and decarbonization of food, water, transportation, energy systems that are really changing the kind of the very infrastructure of our lives. And I just pulled a few kind of news bullets, over the last week to give you some of that context. In July of 2020, electric vehicle sales were up 77% over 2019 numbers. And electric vehicles are looking to hit 3 million in 2020. And I'm just focusing on the electric vehicle thing here. Volkswagen, GM, Ford have just announced really ambitious plans to electrify their fleets. And Tesla is now the world's largest automaker. Think about that. Canada just recently announced that they're going to net zero emissions by 2050. Walmart just placed a huge pre-order for electric semi-trucks. And then, grids everywhere are also trying to think through this. Like, what does the rise of EVs mean, and how does that change their grid? And so there's already folks like in Norway where they're thinking about policy tweaks to look at vehicle to grid and distributed energy resources, and how do you make sure that the grids are able to take this influx of electric vehicles. ExxonMobil in Norway ExxonMobil just exited Norway and is planning to exit the UK, Romania, and Indonesia. BP has just recently declared itself an energy company, and a few weeks ago, this happened, and that already feels like old news at this point. These are all massive shifts in kind of the global energy makeup, and if you're an Alaskan, you're wondering, what does this mean for Alaska, and how does Alaska participate this, and what does it mean for the future of our economy and for our state? Well, what you'll see today, we hope, is just an inkling of what we think an exciting future for Alaska can be. As you'll hear from several of the folks on the line, we think Alaska has a really exciting role to play in terms of being a deployment ground and proving ground for some of the most exciting technologies around electrification and decarbonization, and a place to prove that your technology works, that your business model works, that there's a demand for what you're selling, and to partner with some of the these amazing Alaskans that are partners of ours to really get tech deployed and get things put out in the field and show that there's a bright future for Alaska. We feel this is an actual economic sector for the state, and we're very excited to see some of the traction that the companies that we're working with are getting with Alaskans. And so really that's what today is about, is showing you just a few examples out of the 8 or 9 projects that our companies are currently working on in Alaska. We're just going to go over a few today, but we're really excited about what the future holds, and hope you will be too after listening today. So without further ado, enough talking from me. We have a small but fierce team here at Launch Alaska, and I couldn't do what I do without this incredible team, one of whom is Francis Ball. By the way, between you, the 200 or so of you and myself, it's Francis's birthday today. So I won't bother you with singing her happy birthday as we get going here, but I just wanted you to know that she's been behind getting this event together and is doing an incredible job for our team. And so without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Francis Ball, our operations director, to introduce the rest of our team and our sponsors. So over to you, Francis.
Thank you so much, Isaac, and thanks for that great intro, and of course the birthday shout out. Welcome to all of you. We have, as of now, 192 people tuned in, which is awesome. We are so happy to have you here and so happy to have your support for everything that we're doing. We are coming to you live today from the Alaska Communications Business Technology Center here in Anchorage. Alaska Communications provides advanced network services, managed IT, and cybersecurity across Alaska and around the globe. And we are lucky to have the whole team here on site today, socially distanced in separate rooms, as you can see. So I wanted to give you a quick tour to introduce the rest of our team. First up, we have Rob Royes, our deployment director.
Hey, Francis. Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining.
Hey, Rob. Rob will be moderating our panel today, so you'll hear more from him shortly. And next door, we have Isaac Vanderberg behind the scenes, our CEO, who you just heard from. Hey, Isaac. And then going across the way, you'll see our tech crew all masked up. Hey, Braxton. And then moving on, the next room here, you'll see Pamela Kavaikel, our pipeline and program director. Hey, Pam.
Hey everyone, thanks so much, Francis, and thanks to our TrAKtion attendees for joining us today. I'm so excited that you're spending time with us to celebrate the Launch Alaska portfolio and our partners. While I have you with me, I'd like to give a shout out to ComApp, our official event sponsor for TrAKtion 2020. As you know, Launch Alaska's mission is to accelerate the resource revolution. And ComApp's focus on incorporating renewable energy into existing energy infrastructure in order to sustainably decrease our fuel consumption and our carbon footprint is why we're proud to have them as a sponsor. Thank you so much, ComApp, and thank you everybody for joining us today. Back to you, Francis.
Thanks so much, Pam, and you will hear more from Pam later today when she gives us a look ahead to our 2020 tech deployment track. And to round out the tour over in the last room, I get to wave at myself too if Mike comes over here. Hey, Mike. It's fun to see the behind the scenes look. Thank you so much to our camera crew for giving us a little tour of the Alaska Communications Business Technology Center. And next up, I will pass it back Isaac for him to give you a run through of what we'll be doing today and introduce our keynote speaker.
All right, thank you, Francis, and happy birthday again. So little fun with technology there, and thanks to the Alaska Communications team for some of their creativity and help pulling off this event. So we named the event TrAKtion for a few reasons. So diving into that word here a little bit, TrAKtion is what startups desperately need in their early days to prove to investors that they actually have something that customers want to buy. So it's, you know, kind of another word for revenue. TrAKtion is also a way to define whether you have any sway in a relationship. So it also seems very appropriate because we're very focused on relationships between our companies and Alaska, Alaskans. And it's also, you know, in many parts of Alaska, super important to have traction to stay on your feet during the winter. So that seemed appropriate as well as we're heading into October here. And so what you'll hear over the next 75 minutes are stories of how just a few of the startups that we're working with worked with Alaskans to get traction in all senses of the word. And core to our program is this idea that we're kind of solving the chicken or the egg program. So many startups, as they get up and running, they have a great technology, they have a good team, they have a good idea. But one thing that's tricky is that before, especially in the hard tech space, where they have some kind of physical hardware that they need to manufacture or prototype, there's this chicken or the egg program where they need money to get into production with that hardware and those early versions of their technology. But in order to get money, they need an investment from investors. But the investors, in order to give them money, need to see that the company has traction and that there's actually demand for their product. And so it's this tricky chicken or the egg problem that that startups run into. How do you raise money if you don't have any products in the field yet? But how do you get products in the field unless you have money? And so that's really what our program is designed to help with, is to help some of those early startups get some of their early technologies and prototype them, work with asset owners to show that the technologies are safe and reliable, that they can be delivered on a cost-effective basis, and so that then those exciting startups can go on to raise rounds and grow. So during the day, we'll dive into 3 specific projects and hear from the folks who made them possible. We'll also have a small look ahead to our 2020 tech deployment track, which is starting tomorrow. And thank you to all of the panelists that are part of that TDT program, many of you who are on the line today. But first, before we get into this next piece here, we're excited that US Senator Lisa Murkowski sent us a message and a video that we wanted to share with you. So Senator Murkowski, as you may know, is the chair of the US Senate Committee on Energy and Natural Resources. She has been a strong advocate for Alaska's expanding role in kind of energy innovation and deployment. She's also been a huge advocate and supporter of our program, and really a visionary for the role that Alaska can play in energy innovation and energy transition. So without further ado, I'm going to play a message from US Senator Lisa Murkowski.
Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to help kick off Launch Alaska's 2020 event. I wish that we could all be together in person, but I do appreciate the chance to share my thoughts on the immense opportunity that we have for innovation in Alaska. Our state has unique challenges that give us every reason to be pioneers in cutting-edge technologies. We have an Arctic climate with harsh weather and extreme cold temperatures. We have a vast geography with communities that are spread far apart, often with no connection to the road system, reachable only by boat or by plane. Many of our residents continue to pay incredibly high prices for energy, and we are on ground zero for the disruptive impacts of climate change. In many ways, we've had really no choice but to innovate in order to survive the cold, the dark, and the distance. But our pioneering spirit has become even more important this year as we seek to overcome the coronavirus pandemic. And it will be invaluable in the years ahead as we seek to diversify our economy for the long term. As we look forward, it is clear to me that Alaska is the perfect proving ground for a wide range of emerging technologies. As you'll hear today, we have brilliant and enthusiastic minds actively tackling our hardest problems. We welcome investment from promising businesses and love to help them grow. But as everyone at Launch Alaska knows, we've really only begun to scratch the surface. The work that is occurring today at small, promising startups can change not only our state, but really the rest of the country and the entire world. One area where that is particularly true is in energy. As chairman of the Senate Energy and Natural Resources Committee, I was pleased to invite Launch Alaska's CEO, Isaac Vanderberg, to testify at a hearing last July that focused on the links between energy innovation and economic growth. Isaac described very well how Launch Alaska is partnering with innovators to produce real results here at home and across the globe. And as I listened to his testimony, I couldn't help but be so proud of the success stories that abound in Alaska. A good example we have is down in Cordova, which has incorporated energy storage into its microgrid to help reduce diesel-based generation. Local residents there are now saving money on their energy bills, they're utilizing more of their abundant hydropower resource, and they're experiencing fewer power fluctuations, a win all around. Another success story is at Chena Hot Springs, where Bernie Carl and his team are setting the standard for geothermal innovation. The resort, which sits just outside of Fairbanks, is running the lowest temperature geothermal power facility in the world. It powers the local complex, including greenhouses and the Aurora Ice Museum, at a fraction of the cost of diesel fuel. And other communities in Alaska are making significant advances in harnessing local marine and hydrokinetic energy. The community of Igiugig in southwest Alaska now utilizes one of the offshore renewable power company, ORPC. They're utilizing their RivGen facility to help generate about half of the community's power. And based on that success, we're hoping that many more Alaska communities will try to harness their own MHK potential. And these are just a few of the examples of the true innovation that Alaskans are engaged in, and the leading role that Alaska can play as our energy mix becomes cleaner and cleaner. But like I mentioned before, the best is yet to come. Launch Alaska is focused on the future, supporting the advanced nuclear microreactors that are being developed by Oklo, the end of PFAS, forever chemical contamination, through the systems being made by Aquaga, and better, more efficient shipments of goods to rural Alaska through the app being built by Remora. Combine that with the work that's being done for fisheries, data, drones, water consumption, and in other areas, it's impossible not to be excited about what lies ahead. Through it all, I'll be working to ensure that innovation is supported and rewarded. In addition to the Cold Climate Housing Research Center's partnership with NREL, the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, the Department of Energy recently announced that it would reopen its Arctic Energy Office in Fairbanks. That office will support a renewed focus on the Arctic while emphasizing energy, science, and national security. It will also help ensure greater collaboration between Alaskan innovators and DOE's leading researchers. Now finally, within the Senate, I'll continue to champion legislation that recognizes the need for innovation and the many, many benefits that it provides. Whether my bipartisan energy bill, legislation to develop geothermal energy and advanced nuclear, or my push to open the DOE's loan guarantee programs to states, I recognize that we need a very strong policy framework to support those who risk it all to make their ideas a reality. Innovation is the key to Alaska's future. It's the difference between a stagnant economy and one that is vibrant, sustainable, and filled with good jobs for our people. It's certainly not easy to build that, but we know it is absolutely worth doing. I'm proud to support Alaska's innovators and the companies who are willing to invest in our state. I want to thank Launch Alaska and all of you for your excellent work. I hope you have a great event today. I look forward to hearing more from you in the days ahead. Take care.
Okay, and thank you to Senator Murkowski for her leadership, and to her entire office for all of their great support. The projects Senator Murkowski mentioned are really just, oh, sorry, there we go. My Zoom video started there. I think all of you can feel my pain. These things work 99% of the time, but so anyhow, the project that the Senator mentioned are just scratching the surface of what's beginning to happen in Alaska. We're super excited to continue building success stories for the future. And hopefully in the next couple of years, she'll be talking about some of the success stories that you hear from today and that you'll hear from in the coming weeks and months. So key to some of these success stories is Rob Royce, who joined our team in April as our deployment director. Really, his job is to make these projects a reality and help our companies get their projects off the ground. So I wanted to hand it over to Rob, who's going to run with our panelists here for the next several minutes. Over to you, Rob.
Thanks, Isaac. In the last year, we've welcomed an additional 8 companies into our portfolio who have collectively received 10 project commitments. I'm excited to be able to share with you today the story of 3 of our portfolio companies and the projects they've been working on in Alaska. We've selected these 3 for a number of reasons. For one, they each represent distinct focus areas for Launch Alaska: water, transportation, and energy systems. Not only do these companies and their projects align with our mission to accelerate the resource revolution by decarbonizing and electrifying these systems, but we're also extremely proud of how each has closely collaborated with their project partners to deploy their innovative solutions. It's easy for me to think of science fiction first when I think of innovation. A classic example is the handheld communicator from Star Trek becoming what is now the mobile phone in our pocket that has more computing power than the original spacecraft we first launched into outer space. But when I think a little longer, my thoughts actually go to the creative ways a company or a technology has identified and addressed a problem, And usually it's a problem we've grown to accept as simply a part of life. Through this lens, true innovation is just as often a slight modification or a repurposing of existing technologies in a way that has a disproportionate impact on individuals, organizations, and communities. It's easy to see why our founders are excited about growing their companies and deploying their solutions. To me, it's just as exciting to hear from the front lines of those projects, because I believe innovation begins with the user. We're joined today by Alaskans who have worked tirelessly to make our collective efforts a success. And so I'm particularly thrilled to have them share their experience on the challenges, the thrills, and the impacts of deploying game-changing technologies in the 49th state. We'll start with a short video introduction from each team, followed by a discussion where we will have the opportunity to get to know the founders and their project advocates a little bit better. Before we start, I'd like our audience to know that you can ask a question at any time through the Q&A feature on your screen. You can continue to use the chat feature to discuss amongst yourself, but note we won't be monitoring it for any questions. So any questions, be sure to put into the Q&A feature. And please take the time to upvote the questions you'd like to see asked, and we'll work to get as many of them answered as possible. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce to you Courtney Opshog, CEO and founder of Blue Ocean Gear. With engineering and management experience both in aerospace and underwater companies, Courtney founded Blue Ocean to focus on developing technology as a bridge between economic and environmental sustainability for the oceans. She has brought together a team dedicated to solving the issue of tracking fishing gear and helping commercial fleets operate more efficiently while reducing ghost fishing and improving ocean health. Courtney has authored the patents behind Blue Ocean Gear's smart fishing technology and joins us today from California to tell us more about Blue Ocean's work in the Bering Sea.
Hi, I'm Courtney Opshog. I'm the CEO of Blue Ocean Gear, and we're providing intelligent, connected buoys to track gear for commercial fishing fleets out on the ocean. One of the core approaches of our company is really listening to fishers and observing their operations. This is really key as engineers in making sure that we're designing technology that helps and doesn't interfere with their operations. One of the main problems that fishing fleets have is that they spend hours trying to find their gear in difficult conditions out on the water. And if their gear is lost, it adds the expense of replacing lost gear plus lost harvest. What I really want to highlight, though, is the magnitude of this problem globally. Lost fishing gear is one of the largest environmental issues facing our oceans today. 640,000 metric tons are lost each year that continue to fish, depleting fishery stocks. And we realized that this problem stemmed from the lack of data that the gear could potentially provide. And the most important piece of data is also the simplest, which is where their fishing gear is located. If you can track something out on the water, you can find it faster and are less likely to lose it. So we created our smart buoy systems that use GPS to let fishers track their gear. The buoys just attach onto the main gear, and relevant data is transmitted back to shore so fishermen can use their smartphones to know where their gear is at all times. And they get an alert if it moves too far. Being able to go directly to their gear without searching for it for hours can be a game changer for fleets that are trying to optimize their time out on the water. And as we get more buoys and additional ocean condition sensors out on the water, we can create the largest ocean data network available, using fishing gear to help industries in the ocean operate more efficiently. We were really eager to participate in the Launch Alaska program, as fishing is such an integral part of both the culture and the economy in Alaska. And it represents a really large market for our technology, but we needed connections to make that happen. So through the Launch Alaska program, we were able to meet people from various commercial fisheries learning about what makes fishing in Alaska unique and how their operations run. And our amazing mentors introduced us to fishermen, fisheries managers, and seafood processors, all of which helped paint the picture of what running a pilot in Alaska would be like. We spoke with several who were interested in piloting our gear, including the Alaska Boat Company. And our team had in-depth conversations with Edward Polson, who owns the vessel, as well as the boat captains. And we knew we had found true partners to move forward with. So we'll be testing our smart buoy technology with them over this current season. We'll be iterating and improving the designs based on their feedback and ensuring that the gear makes their job easier and more efficient. Is saving fishermen time and fuel out on the water while getting them the data they need is our main metric. I think we're going to see the fishing industry change drastically over the next 5 to 10 years as technology and data play a bigger role. So our vision involves using technology to create that bridge between conservation and industry in the oceans so we can solve issues that improve ocean health while at the same time improving the way that fisheries and other ocean businesses operate.
Courtney is joined today by Edward Polson. Edward is a second-generation crabber whose father pioneered the crabbing fishery out of Dutch Harbor. He is owner of 2 crab boats out of the Aleutian Islands and the Bering Sea. As one of the younger guys in an industry workforce on the verge of retirement, Edward works with a variety of organizations like the Alaska Bering Sea Crabbers Association, which he founded, and the Bering Sea Fisheries Research Foundation, to identify and source innovation that will modernize commercial fishing. Edward, Courtney, thanks for joining us.
You got it.
Thanks to be here.
Let's let the audience get to know you a little better with a quick lightning round of questions. These aren't meant to stump you. They're quick and easy, so don't think too hard. Just answer. Edward, texting or talking?
Talking.
Courtney, morning or night person?
Night.
Edward, how long can you hold your breath?
Oh, not that long. Half a minute.
Oh, I was expecting more from a fisherman, but okay. Courtney, invisibility or super strength?
Ooh, invisibility.
Awesome. Thanks for playing, Courtney and Edward. I will have you turn your cameras off as I introduce our next team's video, and we'll welcome Courtney and Edward back after the introduction videos for a deeper discussion. Before I introduce the next team, though, I'd like to give you, the audience, a little test. Looking at the 2 trucks on your screen, let us know which garbage truck you think is the electric vehicle. Both vehicles are green, both have wheels, and both are even facing the same direction. So can you identify the very discrete detail that gives it away? Spoiler alert, our next guests are piloting a project to bring this electric vehicle to a neighborhood near you. If you live in Anchorage, that is. As the poll appears on your screen, please select either A or B to let us know which electric or which truck you think is the electric vehicle. And as we get feedback from the audience, we'll see how adept our audience is in determining a CNG garbage truck from an electric garbage truck. And we can all do a little silent drum roll on our desks as we get the results. B, 95% of our audience is correct. The truck on the right is the electric garbage truck coming to a neighborhood in Anchorage very soon. So from eCamion, we are joined today by Tanya Krakovic. Tanya is a passionate change leader and pioneering spirit. She is committed to fostering the clean economy by advising, coaching, and investing in social entrepreneurs. As VP of Special Projects for eCamion, Tanya leads the company's efforts to deploy advanced electric vehicle charging solutions that will enable the grid of the future. Also note, Tanya is one of 2 Tanyas joining us today, so you'll have to forgive me as I refer to her as Tanya from eCamion every time I say her name moving forward. Enjoy.
Hi, my name is Tanya Krakovic. I'm the Vice President of Special Projects with eCamion Inc. I'm delighted to be here with you today. And if I could, I'd like to start by telling you a little bit about the solution that we're bringing to Alaska. So what you see in front of you is what we call our Universal Energy Hub, also known as our Universal Mobility Hub. We entered the market with an energy storage integrated DC fast charger that is capable of charging personal electric vehicles, heavy duty fleet electric vehicles, and mass transit electric vehicles. In that context, we deliver a lot of value because we're able to deliver high power applications without all of the costs typically associated with that level of power transfer. What's also unique about us is that we have a significant amount of value add. So as you can see, our hub can easily integrate with renewables. It can integrate with facilities. It can connect to the grid. It's very grid friendly and can support energy flow into the grid, as well as we can support a plethora of programs. If your regulatory body supports them, we can actually enable demand response and any other program that your ISO may have. If you'll draw your attention to the gray box to the left on the screen, you'll note that we call out that there's zero make ready needed here, which speaks to the idea that you don't have to invest in costly utility upgrades to implement the solution. Benefit stacking is up to you, however many of these use cases that you can take up. They're considered benefits we could easily configure for you. And if you have the interest or the inclination to turn the revenue stream on, any one of them could be a revenue stream. We're very proud of the fact that we can support net zero, and we do have an instance where we run completely off of renewables. I think that's all I really want to say about the solution itself. If I could, I'm going to share a little bit about the upcoming project that we're involved in. So we're very proud to be one of Launch Alaska's portfolio companies. And it's in this context that we were invited to participate in a electric vehicle fleet project. So our project lead is the Solid Waste Services Department in the municipality of Anchorage. And they've received funding for 3 electric vehicles, 2 sanitation trucks and a flatbed truck, as well as the electric vehicle supply equipment, which we will be provisioning. We're very excited because together we're going to have the opportunity to test not only the trucks, but the supply equipment under various conditions, and also test some of those value stacked benefits that I spoke about in the earlier slide. We believe that collecting this real-time performance data and having the opportunity to analyze it will drive significant value for fleet managers, not only in Alaska, but further afield. We couldn't be happier. We're very excited. This is our first boots on the ground project in Alaska, and I look forward to speaking more about the project details with my project colleagues and with yourselves as the session ensues. Thanks very much for your time.
Joining Tanya from eCamion today is Shayna Kilcoy. Shayna is the Energy and Sustainability Manager at Solid Waste Services for the municipality of Anchorage, where it is her job to find ways for Anchorage's municipal entities to save money and energy. For the city of Anchorage, one of the biggest ways to control energy usage is electrifying the massive fleet of cars, trucks, buses, snowplows, and garbage trucks the city manages. The SWS electric garbage truck pilot project is one example of how Shayna helps turn policy into practice. Thanks for being here, Shayna.
Thank you.
As with our previous team, let's do a quick lightning round to start things off. Remember, Shayna and Tanya, answer the first thing that comes into your head. Shayna, sourdough or wheat?
Sourdough.
You passed the Alaska test. Tanya, favorite day of the week?
Thursday.
Thursday. Okay, that's
so close to the weekend.
Yes, it's just so close. Shayna, are dogs people?
They are not. They're dogs.
Oh, you broke half of the audience's heart. Tanya, last question. Tomatoes, fruit or vegetables?
Fruit.
Fruit. Awesome. I love your answers. Feel free to turn your cameras off as I introduce the final team, and we'll welcome you back in just a minute. In our next video, we'll hear from 60 Hertz's founder, Piper Foster Wilder, as she talks about not only their offline first maintenance management platform, but also the super cool experience of developing the tool through the input and support of a mobile and very remote workforce.
Hey, My name is Piper Foster Wilder, and I am the founder of 60 Hertz Microgrids. You'll have a chance to meet my co-founder, Tanya James, as well as one of our invaluable partners at the Alaska Village Electric Cooperative, Joni Sweetman, live on the panel in just a moment. But I'll give you a brief overview of 60 Hertz and what we've experienced over the last 3 years in our startup life in Anchorage. So, 60 Hertz is microgrid maintenance software designed for emerging markets, rural electrification, as well as remote industrial sites. It's a software as a service platform intended for people like this man who are on the front lines of rural electrification. And thanks to the Rural Electrification Act in the United States, Alaska happens to have one of the longest operating experiences that can teach the world a lot of lessons now that microgrid development is becoming more and more vogue. The problem that 60 Hertz set out to solve is really based on why maintenance can be challenging in remote places, especially with low bandwidth and people that are relatively untrained, for whom receiving support is expensive and time consuming. And so our solution was largely born of stories that partners and colleagues had begun telling me and that I learned about working in the renewable energy sector in Alaska. So we take basically a paper checklist and turn it into a digital actionable checklist and so much more. We're saving our customers on the magnitude of $300,000 per failure incident. And here's a peek at what the software looks like right now. It's a tablet-based, phone-based field app where data then comes home to a supervisor at a cloud-based dashboard. But the most important story is really to talk about the people that we're getting to serve. And I'll get into why Alaska was a phenomenal place to start this company, but want to provide the teaser as a result of the good grounding that we've had with our Alaskan customers and co-development partners. We are now able to serve people in Suriname, in sub-Saharan Africa, now increasingly across the Arctic, and working on closing our first customer in Southeast Asia. We have our first military microgrid, and these are all places where increasingly this value of maintenance for microgrids, maintenance for remote places that Alaskans know so well, we're finding good footing elsewhere. We had the benefit in 2017 and 2018 of job shadowing, not only with Alaska Village Electric Cooperative operators and personnel, but a variety of other utilities and commercial sites across the state, and just had a largesse of stories. So much information that helped shape this platform that we've now invested 250 hours of human-centered design in Alaska and also in other geographies and sectors. These are some of our first users. This is some of our first 40 users. We've learned lessons that have surprised everyone, and it's just been a joy to follow where the story has led. You know, just understanding, debunking myths about certain aspects of maintenance culture, finding new ways to reframe problems that people have encountered across the state, but that are reflected globally. Debunking things like, oh, people don't want to try new technology, and in fact we're learning from our users that they do like this modern tool. How important connection is, that's a statement that makes sense only when you've lived 1,000 miles from your closest colleague. We love Alaskan culture, and it's been a great joy to hire an individual who is fluent in Yupik with which to impart his culture and communicate with some of our early users. And of course, understanding how people love to do a good job and to show that off. So I'll close with this and turn it over now to Tanya and Joni and the rest of the team, but thanks for the chance to give an overview.
Joining for 60 Hertz here today is Tanya James. Tanya is a 17th generation combat veteran with a background in emergency management. With over 6 years in the renewable industry, Tanya has played an essential role in the launch of various projects in heat and power and nanogrids. Tanya's passion for energy sovereignty for rural populations motivates her work at 60 Hertz to empower local communities and individuals with the right tools. Thanks for joining us, Tanya. And joining Tanya from 60 Hertz is Joni Sweetman with Alaska Village Electric Cooperative. Joni has played an essential role over the past 11 years in identifying challenges in workflow management, specifically for isolated workers, and applying technology solutions in the fields of off-grid power, utility operations, salmon research, grant administration, and subsistence fishing advocacy. She currently oversees 120 power plant operators serving in 58 remote communities across Alaska. She is a committed advocate for her remote plant operators, and she's committed to bridging logistical voids so that workers can perform their best in locations with minimal infrastructure. Thanks for joining us, Joni.
Hello.
As with the previous teams, I'm going to put you in the hot seat. Let's get to know you both with a few lightning questions. Joni, you're up first. Paperback or Kindle?
Paperback.
I'm with you there. Tanya from 60 Hertz. Ask permission or beg forgiveness? I think I know your answer, but let's see. Tanya, I couldn't hear you. Can you speak up? Looks like we've got a little technical difficulty. So I'm gonna
beg for forgiveness.
There it was, and I was right. Joni, do you put toilet paper on the right way or the wrong way?
The wrong way, what can I say?
And Tanya from 60 Hertz, what's for dinner tonight?
I don't know. I don't have to cook it. Today is not my night.
Most of us, right?
I'm so excited.
For the final round, we're going to bring everybody back. So as the rest of our panelists turn their cameras and mics on, Courtney, you're up first. Welcome back. Do cats have any regrets?
Doubt it.
I do too. Speaking of cats, Edward, name your pet peeve.
Oh, my pet peeve. I would say aggressive drivers.
Oh, very good, very good. Tanya from 60 Hertz. How many cups of coffee do you drink in a day?
I'll just go with
Too many.
2.
Joni, what new skill do you want to learn?
Fermentation.
Fermentation?
Ooh.
Okay. We've got a lot of Alaskan homebrewers and such in the States, so that sounds like a good one. Tanya from eCamion, how many hours a night of sleep do you get?
About 6.
6? That's more than I expected from the email at 3:30 in the morning from you this morning.
Time difference.
Shayna, what do you think about when you're alone in the car?
Probably how to avoid left-hand turns.
Yeah. All right, for the final round, I've got some founders questions for us, just a tad bit serious, but not much. Tanya from 60 Hertz, your founders question, what do you want your legacy to be?
I think, you know, I used to be a police officer, and there was a time that I ran into a gentleman that I had arrested and actually investigated a number of times. And he shared with me how impactful the interactions were between he and I over the course of the years. And he had since, you know, made some course correction and was doing quite well. So I think that left me with the impression that we just don't know how important the interactions we have with one another are. And so having that servant-minded approach to life and what I bring to 60 Hertz, and with 60 Hertz, it's that stewardship of knowledge and sharing it within organizations that we get embedded in, sharing knowledge across different regions, and having that servant-centered approach to how we do that is really important to me.
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate that. Tanya from eCamion, your founder's question. What inspires you?
So in this time when so many things seem to be broken, I think the good news is that all of it is up for reimagining. And as far as that goes, that has really been fodder for us at eCammy and fodder for me. I think the thing that has really made it amazing is I've come to understand that radical generosity from all places in the ecosystem are supporting these ideas. And so I feel like it couldn't be a better time to be a social entrepreneur. I feel so uplifted by what I perceive to be the tremendous amount of support that we're getting, both from stakeholders, from the likes of, the Launch Alaskas of the world, from our first customers, from people who are fundamentally not asking us to, present our long list of thousands of customers who have said yes, but who are willing to step up and be that first customer and test that concept and help us move that idea to the forefront. And I think this ties to why I like Thursdays, because it's the anticipation of we're almost there. And I think Thursday is like, hey, the weekend is almost there. And social entrepreneurship and where we are in this space right now, I think this is probably the most hopeful I have felt in all the years that I've been alive.
Awesome. I wrote it down, and with your permission, I'm going to steal the term radical generosity. I think that's a fantastic term. Thank you. Courtney, your founder's question. How do you define success?
I think we see a lot of ways in the world that technology is being used irresponsibly in a lot of different ways. And I think that, to me, success, especially for our company, but also in general, I think if we can find ways to use technology in a responsible manner so that we can help make the world a better place, help businesses run better, help make our oceans and our environment healthier, that to me is how I would see success.
Thank you so much, all of you. Wonderful answers to the lightning round questions as well as the founders' questions as well. And I think I see a common thread between you all, which is why we've invited you all to be on the panel today. Thanks for having some fun with me, first of all. We've invited each of you here for two reasons primarily. Most obviously, you're each a part of projects in Alaska accelerated by the Launch Alaska TDT program. But also, our team has been struck by the unique and dynamic relationships that you've developed with each other over the course of deploying these projects. Joni, you've mentioned to me before your fax machine problem. Now, first of all, I think of anything that involves a fax machine as a problem, but I can only imagine what that means for you, managing a remote workforce of more than 100 spread across, I think, almost 1,000 miles geographically. So did anyone in your office have initial reservations introducing 60 Hertz's platform? And how did the remote workforce initially receive it?
We had a lot of reservations in the office in introducing anything new, even though a fax machine is probably the biggest albatross known, only because the breakdowns in our processes that are created by an inability to communicate can actually create problems outside of just running a power plant. And so I was really cautious about trying to have the plant operators do anything new. We have plant operators that are right out of high school, and we have plant operators that might be up in their 70s. And so I already felt like we were asking a lot just trying to get plant logs submitted on a weekly basis. We have a lot of failures with the fax. And so that means that any plant operator might be called at any time to go resubmit paperwork. So I was concerned on asking the plant operators to stretch in any direction, to be honest.
And how did your operators initially receive it?
I think secretly they were all saying, when can we get rid of the fax machines? Because there wasn't anybody that balked at the idea that, okay, here's a tablet. So they're writing in little tiny handwriting on an 8.5 by 14 sheet of paper. There are 714 squares they have to fill every week, and then they have to get that faxed in. I mean, that's a burden. And suddenly we hand them a tablet, and I wasn't sure that everybody had a smartphone. I wasn't sure how we were even going to train 120 plant operators to use something new. And what they actually did was jump right on. Training happened pretty seamlessly. They wanted to play around with it, and pretty soon they were doing things as if they no longer wanted to use paper. And in fact, we've had to rein people back in because our processes aren't ready in the office to get rid of paper. But there might have been one person that was hesitant to learn, and he got his co-plant operator to show up with him, and they learned together. So I'm sure they've told 60 Hertz directly stories about, like, thank God you've shown up.
You know, that reminds me of Edward, you know, some stories that we've talked about with your crews adopting Courtney's technologies. And you know, Courtney, you mentioned, like, for the first time ever, you showed up and they had read the manual before you got there. But, you know, maybe tell me, Edward, what's your motivation to explore and adopt these new technologies, both yours and your crews?
Yeah, well, there's a lack of new technology or implementation of technology in the fishing industry. If you look at a lot of the boats that are fishing, most of them were built in the 70s. Other than the electronics in the wheelhouse, not much has really changed. You know, what we developed and what the guys that were pioneering the fisheries in the 70s did seems to work, and we really haven't messed with it that much. But to be honest, we've been a little bit left behind. The 21st century is actually here, and we really haven't embraced it. So, you know, there's a lot of opportunities, I think, in terms of integrating in improved technology, modern technology, both with, you know, with sensors that can help us become more efficient, and, you know, get our guys back home again sooner, and then also ways to make our boats safer. There's just a multitude of ideas. What's fun is when you get fishermen in a room along with technology experts, and you just start talking about brainstorming ideas, you'll end up, the whole day will be gone in no time, and you'll come up with all kinds of ideas. And some of them are absolutely addressable, such as what the solution that Blue Ocean Gear is prototyping with us. And others are going to be things that may take you 10 years. You know, the easy solutions actually were found in the 70s. The hard ones are the ones we're working on now. And, but it's pretty exciting because, you know, there's just, I see a lot of opportunity out there.
I think I've heard you refer to Courtney smart buoys as gateway technology. So Courtney, was this strategic on your part? And what future opportunities do you think this gateway tech holds for the fishing industry?
Well, you know, the way we look at our buoys, you know, the most important thing that they're transmitting now is just the location of the gear. And I think that just that it's such a huge time saver, and it's such a great way to prevent, you know, losing gear. But, you know, the ultimate goal is to put additional sensors on these buoys. Now they become, you know, we're getting data from the fishing industry, so using fishing gear, and I think that's a really powerful tool that then can be used across ocean industries. So I think that's where we see this going.
Awesome. I'm going to jump over to Shayna because I know, you know, when we're talking about the excitement around adopting new technologies for your garbage truck pilot project, you actually had a plan and a budget for quite a while to get one of these trucks, but you had to pause and solve a few technical problems. Tell us about those technical problems and how eCamion helped you solve them.
Well, at first we actually thought that buying a heavy duty electric garbage truck and the mid-size electric box truck was going to be the hard part. And it did take years, but we recently made progress on procuring them through Peterbilt. Solid Waste Services is basically a transport business, so we're kind of the perfect place to test this equipment for our large fleet. And the life cycle or the duty cycle of a garbage truck is well suited for this. Our garbage trucks drive about 50 miles a day, which is not that far even in cold temperatures. And so they make our current diesel trucks, they're making frequent stops, accelerating and idling, and they're getting about 2 to 3 miles per gallon. So that's why we're so interested in electric trucks. So now that we have the specs on the truck batteries, that led us to the next step of figuring out the most efficient and cost-effective way to charge these. And as you heard in the video, Tanya discussed something called peak demand charge. And there's two different electric costs we pay. One is for the energy we use, and one is for a separate charge for the peak power draw each month. And that draw makes up roughly 40% of our electric bill. And this percentage could jump as high as 70% when charging 2 electric trucks simultaneously. That would greatly reduce the payback on our project and was a bigger spike than we initially realized. So we learned about eCamion last year through Launch Alaska and started talking with them about whether a battery pack could help us avoid creating that spike in the demand. And I heard Tanya explain it once through a water analogy that I'm going to repeat. The eCamion battery is like a water tank. It allows water to slowly drip into the tank during the day, and then when it's needed, the water is like Niagara Falls. And so if we were to take the Niagara Falls rush directly from the grid, it would spike our load and costs. So in working with eCamion, thanks to their energy storage integrated fast charger, we can not only charge our vehicles quickly and cost effectively, but the system could provide electricity back into the building during times with the highest draw. So we'll still pay for all the electricity we use, we'll just be able to be more flexible and manage that peak power. And I also wanted to add that eCamion was incredible to work with. They were very responsive and focused on finding the right solution for us. And they had an existing knowledge of our market and rates, which made that move a lot faster, since Alaska is, of course, a little different than most places. They also worked with us to submit a successful grant proposal to the Department of Energy for our heavy-duty electric vehicles. And these are vehicles that are virtually non-existent in the region, so successful deployment of the technology in Alaska would make a compelling case to other fleets. And just overcoming the demand of charging and allowing for flexibility in charging is a huge part of that. It really is, I liked in Tanya's presentation or the video, a universal energy hub.
Shana, I'm hoping that I can work with you. I'll let you know what my street address is and you can just route the truck down my road. You know, you've shared with me how much eCamion had helped you in that kind of design process, being very iterative. Tanya, from eCamion, tell me though, how important was it for you to find partners like SWS and the municipality of Anchorage that were not only ready, but eager to help you pioneer these technologies?
Yeah, you said it. And Shana, you did a fantastic job, girl. You got the solution down pat. Yeah, it was incredible. It was good because, you know what, at the end of the day, you really do need people who are vested in success and, you know, want to play actively with you. So I think the team at SWS was great because they just provisioned the data. They didn't hold anything back. We really took the approach of running iterations and modeling it. And at every point, you know, at every iteration of the model, it may have been that we may not be the right solution. So that's a risk that you take. But having said that, it turned out that we would just kind of spin it a little bit and then realize there was another value stream we could follow. And then, you know, at the end of the day, when we were at the place where we heard that, you know, we had found the funding and we're going to do it, I thought, wow, this is amazing. I'm so pumped to be doing this. But then the very next thought, that probably within 30 or 40 minutes of hearing that news, I thought, you know what, we actually just had an exploratory discussion with PACCAR, who delivers Peterbilt trucks, not 6 or 8 weeks ago in Seattle. And I'm like, oh my God, like we're going to have data for them. So my next call was to them to say, hey, I wanted you to know that this is what we're doing and you guys are actually indirectly involved. And we're going to be in the position that in between SWS and us, we'll have some fabulous data to help you perpetuate your goals as we're perpetuating ours. So not only did we get that value, but there was immediately another value link. And I think it's, you know, you create the space and then you just keep connecting the dots and stepping towards like the next value nugget. It's been fantastic. And it's actually, we've done a lot of things up to now. I mean, we're already deployed in the field with the technology, but this is actually our first case for sanitation trucks, and super pumped because each install brings more data, more insight, more ability to sort of evolve that value proposition to the next segment. So we are delighted. And not to mention, I've been to Alaska twice now, so I love it. And I was committed to coming back for an actual boots on the ground project. And I don't think that anybody was more committed outside of my Launch Alaska cohort partners and team. So did it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You know, one of the things that has always drawn me to Alaska, and one of the things I'm most proud of, is our community. And I think you've experienced a little bit of that, and you've become a part of it. So thank you. Speaking of, Tanya from 60 Hertz, you know, Piper mentioned that you've spent over 250 hours of human-centered design in the field developing your product. So what does that mean? What is human-centered design, and how do you think that played a role in your in AVEC's adoption of your platform?
Sure. So human-centered design is the principle of design where you go to the end user, you go to the end user and you learn as much as you possibly can, and not just about how they would interact with your software, but also sort of around the edges. What's their daily life like? Those types of things, because you'll be amazed at how much you learn that will help inform the user interface, the functionality. So 250 hours looks and feels like small planes heading out to the bush, going in tandem with an anthropologist and spending time learning on how we're supposed to do this design, this research. Then bringing it all back together, synthesizing it, meshing it in from different angles and perspectives, and just trying to be a sponge in our learning. I think, to your second question, and I look at Joni, but I think that our commitment to really, truly understanding the end user, and, you know, given some of my own personal background, my family's from the YK Delta, I'm a quarter Yupik, and I'd worked in the bush for, 6 years prior to this effort. So I think taking all of that, plus our commitment as a company, and saying, hey, we really care about what this looks like for the power plant operator, that it's something that looks and feels like was developed specifically for them, was really important. To get Joni's blessing to be able to get on those small planes and go see her guys and gals working out in her communities.
It sounds like you not only enjoyed being out there, but sometimes they may have had a hard time getting rid of you. I think, Joni, you mentioned there was one particular employee that may have had a little bit harder time adopting it. And what was your take on how Tanya approached that and helped him get over that hump?
Initially, I was concerned that we were going to have a solution that we hand out and say, look, you're going to use this, without realizing that the plant operators work part-time. They go to the plant 3 times during the day, and they live a subsistence lifestyle. So they are juggling quite a bit already, doing a job and maintaining families in these remote places. And so it was important to me that anybody that has pushback, the trainers would listen to them and find a way to communicate that would make them want to use the tablet. It wouldn't do anybody any good if we were using a tool that we didn't want to use. And so some thoughts were that we would just lay down the law and say, you will use this. But I just don't think that that's a successful way. And that really isn't the approach that 60 Hertz had. The people that they had training were like, you can learn this. What is it that you're concerned about? And then dealing with those concerns directly in ways that showed that this wasn't going to be a difficult tool to start using. And I really appreciated that they were willing to listen to plant operators and not come from a stance of, I'm solving your problems, but more, what is the most difficult part about doing your job and what would make it better?
That's awesome. I can't help but think of the story you shared with me about how it's changed the way you interact with the operators. In fact, you've not met a lot of the operators.
For sure. So there's, at any one time, there might be 120, there might be 130 plant operators, and I have not met 90% of them. And we conduct our business over the phone. And so I feel like anybody that interacts with a plant operator has to be able to establish some kind of connection, and it has to be important to them that the plant operator wants to answer their call. I found that if you have a personality that's abrasive, the plant operator just does not have to answer your call, and then we wouldn't be able to do business. And so there has, once they met Tanya or once they met Joel, Joel is a consumer help desk type person. The plant operator never asked me to call them. I'll say, you know, you're going to need to call Joel and Tanya, and they'll be like, I got this. And that really is not the experience a lot of plant operators have with dealing with office people. They actually are resistant to really talking to many of us. And so the fact that 60 Hertz will establish a relationship and they see this as a give and take in developing this product means the world to me.
Thank you. Tanya from eCammy, and I've got a little bit of a technical question from the audience for you, but I think it's great. And in fact, I think I may have my own follow-up. What are the special mods needed for the Alaska climate? Eric Carlson is asking. What have you done for Alaska?
Yeah. Actually, I think as far as that goes, we haven't had to calibrate to Alaska specifically, because of course we have Slave Lake in northern Alberta, which I think must be a close cousin in terms of temperature. So we're already operating at, I believe, up to -40 C. So I think as it relates to the actual the architecture footprint, I mean, our units have both heating and cooling built into them. So there is a little bit of energy that is sucked up to keep the ESS cabinet at the right temperature. I think like anything else, as soon as you get into the extreme weather, whether it's hot or cold, you lose a little bit on the round trip efficiencies. But all things being equal, I believe we've tested that one out. So I guess this will be a secondary validation.
Awesome. You know, speaking of getting ready for the future, for those sorts of environments, Shayna, you've actually cut the ribbon on a new facility across the street from where this will be installed. And so one of the considerations was how easily it would transfer, as well as integrate solar in the future. So tell me what advantages were there in terms of using eCammy for the project as it'll look maybe a year from now?
For eCammy, we did keep changing the goal line. We put them through a lot of iterations. At first it was very general, you know, does this work? Will this work for us? Do the numbers line up? And then we threw more at them. We said, well, we're actually building a new transfer station across the street, so we need a system that can be moved. They said, yeah, that's fine. We can do that with this system. And then we said, you know, Solid Waste Services is dedicated to leading the way in clean energy. So we'll want to install solar on this facility. Can we integrate that to the charger? They said, yes, we can do that. And then we said, you know, we can actually increase this to not one heavy duty garbage truck, but two, and along with the mid-sized garbage truck. And so they had to recalculate again and are figuring out the current system size. So we're so excited about this project, and hope that other entities in Alaska can see the value that they offer, because Anchorage is not the only one with this issue of demand costs. And you know, I think with eCammy, this is not a complete rebuild of this idea, but I think you said it, Tanya, this is a reimagining. So it's not completely new technology. It's something that we know how it works and how it can be integrated with these things.
You know, what I'm hearing from pretty much everybody is there's innovators not only just in the founders of these companies, but in the end users as well. Y'all are pushing the Launch Alaska portfolio companies to grow and to transform their equipment to meet your needs, and it's exciting to hear how y'all all work together. You know, Edward, you mentioned your priorities of safety and efficiency. And I can completely understand from your perspective why that's important. But I imagine on the efficiency side, there's some dollars and cents to all this. And I don't think what we've touched on quite yet is the impact that Blue Ocean Gear's buoys will have to your bottom line. What does that mean for you to have this equipment and to be able to use it in the field?
Yeah, I mean, you know, once we get this dialed in, these prototypes are out there. They're working right now. I talked to my skipper last night. He was in Deliverance, and he was super excited when he can see this smart buoy pop up on on the website and see where it's at. And you know, we all have, we know how much time we're wasting trying to find these buoys. In our case, you know, our pots are in, you know, 2,000 feet of water. We have buoys going to the surface, and a lot of times there's so much current in the environment we are operating in that the buoys go all the way they'll go to the bottom, and they'll be down until the tide changes. And, you know, we don't always know when they're going to be up at the surface. We don't always know what gear we can haul, when we can haul it. It's really, it's not super efficient. Let's put it that way. So the technology, the prototype that we're working on with Blue Ocean Gear can literally save us weeks. Now, obviously, that is not just, you know, smoke going out the stack. That's also time my guys get to have home with their families. And it also lowers the odds of our guys getting hurt. They're just doing less screwing around out there. So, you know, the more efficient we can be, it actually helps with, you know, with many things. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty exciting. I mean, really, when we you know, we're just in the first inning of this, and, you know, you start talking to my guys about it. I'm like, hey, can we do this and this and this? I mean, they're already thinking 3 steps ahead. But it's been a lot of fun.
Awesome. Well, we've run out of time, unfortunately. I think we could probably talk all day at this point, but let me thank you all for being a part of this event and for lending your unique insights into your projects. What strikes me about all of you is the enthusiasm and the passion you have for making a positive change. You're all great examples of the opportunities that we each have as individuals to play a role in the energy transition and the resource revolution. It's super exciting to learn about your successes, and I must say, you set the bar very high for our incoming TDT cohort. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Pam as we look forward to 2020's Tech Deployment Track. Pam?
Thanks so much, Rob, and thank you to our panelists and attendees for the panelist discussion. It was fantastic to hear how our portfolio is doing and how our partners are working with them. As you may know, our Tech Deployment Track, or TDT as we affectionately call it in-house, is our partnership and deployment program where we recruit companies with Alaska-centric game-changing technologies and pair them with partners and projects in Alaska. We're excited to have 20 teams and 44 panelists join us this year for our 2020 TDT program. They all make it possible. As a celebration of our program, we have a short video from last year's TDT so that you can get a glimpse of the magic that happens during our TDT season.
It was a crazy 24 hours. We brought together a couple dozen startups from the lower 48, from Alaska, from all over the world, and about 30 panelists. So those were power players and decision makers from all over Alaska, including investors from outside, and brought them together for one very compressed, very intensive work session.
So far it has been really great. Regardless of what happens, I've made contacts that will help me get to the next step.
We were on our last team presenting to the entire panel. In the middle of this team's presentation, one of our panel members throws his hands up in the air and starts talking to the person next to him. And so when we asked him what was going on, he said, "This is exactly what I was looking for."
That's really why we created the program the way we did, to try to get as many exciting, promising companies in front of as many decision makers and asset owners as we could.
We chose our panelists because they're a group of folks who have a bead on opportunities, challenges, projects in Alaska that might be really valuable to our startups. So that includes folks like utilities, municipalities, people that work at the native corporations, really this group of asset owners, folks that have, decision authority over projects and over opportunities.
It has taken what can sometimes be a difficult or a long process to do due diligence for an investment, and has created a condensed version.
We're trying to get solutions to the most pressing problems of our day into the field. And the way we think that we can do that is by connecting people with solutions to the people with challenges.
All right. So thank you, Pam, and also thank you, Rob, for that great conversation. It's one of the true joys of this job is being able to hear these kinds of conversations really throughout the year. But that was exceptional. So thank you both. And as the video mentioned, and as Pam mentioned, our TDT program begins again tomorrow. So here we go again with the new crop of startups. And so the energy level and excitement level is as high as always, and we're super excited to get going tomorrow. A reminder that, you know, Launch Alaska's mission is to accelerate the resource revolution, which means decarbonizing and electrifying food, water, transportation, energy systems. What you've seen today is really just a sampling of what is happening here in Alaska. And I would also just say that, you know, one thing we maybe didn't highlight as much is that there's a strong time component to our program. And so that some of the companies that you saw today, we've been working with for a year, a couple of years. These things take time. And that's kind of the design of the program, is to make sure that we're letting real relationships build, letting trust develop, giving folks the time to perform and to kind of iterate. But as a result, we're now at a point, we've been around for a few years, where we're starting to see a bunch of exciting stuff come together. These are 3 of the projects we have out of 8, as Rob mentioned, and we hope to be sharing more content in the near future on some of these other great projects. Thank you, everyone that was involved today across the board. Thank you also in particular to the Office of Naval Research, which is our major funding sponsor, as well as the National Renewable Energy Lab. And another shout out to the great folks at Alaska Communications and ComApp, and the team Carrie Quaid, who did all the behind the scenes event work, and Braxton and Michael, the tech team. Thank you so much. Also to our board members, many of whom were on the call today. Great to see you all on there. And we will stick around for a few minutes in the chat if you have any additional questions or want to reach out to any of us. But from all of us at Launch Alaska, we'll see you next time. Take care.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all. See ya.